Hi, folks. Got an absolutely amazing guest on today. We've had him on before. He is David Kurten. He is the leader of the Heritage Party. Fantastic guy. First met him during the kind of COVID scenario that was going on, where he was protesting against the lockdowns and everything. So, how are you, David?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Liam. Thanks for having me on the show again. Great to be here. And there's so much to talk about. It makes me a little bit mad in my head, but I try to keep sane and I try to keep happy despite it all.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I've got loads of notes here, but I know there is so much going on. I think one of the things that I really wanted to start on is that the whole digital ID thing, because people are worried about that. What would be your advice to them? And maybe you can give us a kind of background why this is something that we should try and avoid at all costs.
Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of people are very worried about it. I am as well, because if they bring this in, it will completely change the relationship between the individual and the state and how we can conduct our lives and also, down to the level of individual financial transactions. And they want to create a whole new world, basically. We operate in a completely different way where everything is on the blockchain, everything is on a smartphone, and you can't do anything really without permission or without digital verification. So I understand how people are very, very worried about this. I don't want this because I don't think that there's any need to create a system to have permission to do things that we've always done freely before. But at the moment, the government is making more and more laws, legislation, regulations to build this digital ID framework. And we know that Kier Starmer said at the end of September, everyone is going to have a digital ID. Everyone will have to have a brick card, because that will allow the government to stop illegal immigration, which is an absolute load of nonsense. Everyone knows that. Everyone saw through that immediately because they could stop illegal immigration today if they wanted. They could
Yes.
stop it this afternoon if they wanted. Just
Mhm.
don't send out any more boats to pick up people coming across the channel in these dinghies, and then it's done, no problem. But of course, they're facilitating it. And this is the classic problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem, then there's a reaction, and then they come and offer the solution, which is digital ID, which is being pushed by Keir Starmer, but also the people behind him as well, like Tony Blair and the people in the Tony Blair Institute, the World Economic Forum, all these kind of things. And it's a hideous change that they want to bring in. And, together with the whole smart cities agenda, 15-minute cities, the way they tried to lock everybody down and introduce this in the COVID era, we've already seen they
Yes.
tried to bring in vaccine passports. So
Yes.
this would be vaccine passports on steroids. And I don't want it. I don't think anyone in their right mind wants it either.
No, no. So, but Keir Starmer says, look, it's just going to help us. It's going to make our life easier. We won't have to produce a passport. We're going to love it. Do we trust him that he's just going to stop there and that's all that it requires?
It's risible, absolutely risible. There he says, "Oh, this is going to make your life easier because you won't have to rummage around in your drawers to find something that's got your address on." Look, I would rather rummage around in my drawers for two
Yeah.
minutes to use paper rather than to be forced or coerced to having an app on my smartphone, which is going to track everything I do and give someone in the government access to all my records, all my papers, all my data, all my financial transactions, and perhaps also send that to people processing the information abroad. I mean, we already know that they're trying to force 8 million company directors this
Yes.
month to
Yes.
get digital ID verification so they can get a one login
Mhm.
password, which will allow them to use Companies House
Mhm.
to submit the relevant information they have to do every year to not break the law if they run a company. So for me as a company director and 8 million other people, they're already trying to coerce us to do this and say, well, if you don't do it, you're breaking the law. You
Mhm.
might get fined. You might get, the police come knocking at your door because you haven't verified your ID digitally with facial recognition
Mhm.
technology. So they're doing this for company directors. They'll do it then for a larger cohort. They'll do it for people who want to renew their driving license, people who want
Yes.
to renew their passports. They
Mm.
say that by 2027, all government services are going to be on this one login system and you won't have a choice. So what do you do? I mean, it's very, very difficult for anybody to not engage with the government, unless you're, living off grid somewhere. So they're trying to do this. I mean, I would just say, don't comply if you possibly can. Certainly don't get the app on your phone. There's other
Yes.
ways to get a one login um, code. You can go through a verified accountant rather than doing
Yeah.
it yourself, which means you don't have to get your photo taken. But they're bringing this in all kinds of other ways as well. It was, I think, a long time ago, the anti-money laundering and terrorist
Yes.
financing regulations, which mean that for certain financial services, you have to do a KYC, know your customer check, and often that's almost all of the time that's done through digital identity verification with facial recognition again. And then they've just introduced this year the Data Use and Access Act, and
Mm.
that sets up the digital identity and attributes trust framework, where there's
Right.
lots of companies that are approved by the government to do digital ID verification. So they're setting the system up. And but what I am heartened by is the
Mm.
pushback, because
Yes.
there's so much pushback. There was a huge
Yeah.
rally last week in
Yes.
London. I
Yes.
went to the rally in Cardiff and spoke
Yeah.
there. So it's fantastic, the pushback against this by so many people from across the country.
So as a company director, what's the kind of time limitation you have to kind of before you start getting fined or you start getting into difficulties if you don't comply?
They're bringing it in over a 12-month transition period, which
Mm.
starts on the 18th of November. So, over that period, when you are due to make your confirmation statement for your company, then within the 2 weeks of doing that, you have to register with the one login system. Otherwise, they threaten you that you are in breach of the law. I mean, I've had loads of letters from Companies House over the last 6 months saying, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do it now, do it early. If you don't do it, then you're going to be breaking the law.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people have got this coercion to do it. So it's going to have to be done over the next 12 months. And the only other alternative for a company director is to dissolve your company. Actually, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people who are just thinking, well, I'm just going to dissolve my company because I don't
Yes.
want to do this.
So how damaging is it going to be for business? Because so many people will just dissolve their companies and they won't go with it.
I think it's going to be very damaging. I mean, you've got 8 million company directors and,
Mhm.
about 5 to 6 million companies. Because
Yes.
obviously some companies have more than one director. So, we will see, but I wouldn't be surprised if 10 or 20% of companies registered at Companies House just dissolve over the next 12 months because people just don't want to do it. And this has been brought in ostensibly because they say it's to combat company fraud. This
Mhm.
was done under another bill. It was
Yeah.
the sort of corporate transparency bill. I can't remember the full name of it, but that was
Yes.
introduced by the Tories in
Mhm.
2023, and now it's been implemented by Labour. So they're working together on this. But so it's done to say, oh, there's a lot of fraud at Companies House, so we need to make sure that everyone verifies their identity with digital ID, which you can see the logic of. But the thing is,
Mhm.
it's going to harm uh, yeah, many, many more innocent people than it is catch people who do fraud.
Yes.
And the way I look at it, the biggest fraudsters, the biggest money launderers, the biggest supporters of terrorism are
Mhm.
actually in the government.
Yes.
They do more
Exactly.
than anyone outside.
Yeah.
Look at all the money that they're laundering through net zero and through
Oh
Ukraine,
God.
billions and
Yes. Yeah.
billions.
So
So
how
they need to
confident
they
are
need to be looked at, not ordinary people.
absolutely how confident are you, David, that the British people have a backbone to stand up? Because this always kind of worries me a bit. I think there was maybe sort of 10, 15% of people who stood up during COVID and they were very solid and that they weren't going to give in, people like yourself. Do you have any faith that people's eyes are opened a bit more on this digital ID and that they won't comply?
I think there's many more people who see the danger of this than did COVID and
Yeah.
lockdowns and injections at the time. A lot of people just bought the lie that you need to get an injection to
Yes.
get out of lockdown. That was what we were told. And,
Yeah.
I stood firm against it. I
Yes.
was the only elected politician for two
Mm,
years that stood up against the vaccines. And,
yes.
now almost everybody's saying, oh, we weren't told the truth and whatever. So everyone sees that now. But I think because of that, now people are much more open to realizing that this is another attack on our freedom and another attempt to corral everybody into a framework of control. And totalitarian control, by which you won't be able to live life as you normally did before. And so people have gone through that once. They don't want to go through it again. And I'm heartened by the polls. I mean, I don't usually take much notice of polls, but opinion polls on this issue say that since it was announced by Kier Starmer, because he's so unpopular, the
Yes.
support for digital ID has gone down from about 55% to under 20%. So now we've
Yes.
got a supermajority that are against it. So that is very, very good.
Yeah, he won't care though, will he? I mean, he's just somebody that is just tunnel vision and this and that. Now, if there is a change of government, supposing, for instance, reform got in the next election, do you have any faith that people like Nigel Farage would reverse the digital ID? I mean, he said that he's very anti-digital ID, but do you feel if he got in that he would scrap it?
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, I'm in the Heritage Party, so
Yes.
I'm in a different party. I'm not in Reform, and I think we
Yeah.
got the manifesto and the principles that fully understand this. And the
Yes.
difference between us and Nigel Farage is he never mentioned it at all until about
Mhm.
2 months ago when he saw
Yes.
everyone talking about it and it was popular
Mhm.
and a lot of people in his party, in his, well, in our area of politics, if you like,
Mhm.
that are concerned about it. He saw that there was concern and then he's like, oh, I better say something about this now. Whereas we've been against this and speaking out
Yes.
about it for 5 years when it's not been popular, when we've been derided as conspiracy
Yes.
theorists. And I don't think he fully understands what he talks about. I mean, he puts things across very well. I mean,
Yes.
absolutely, you got to admit he's a great speaker. He's
Yes.
a very, very good communicator. He's a populist. But I don't think he fully understands all of the legal framework, the legislation coming in. And this is
Mhm.
not just about BritCard. This is about the one login system. This is about know your customer. Anti-money laundering regulations. And when you can see is a little bit of an inconsistency because reform then they're now talking about digital ID. Well, but
Mhm.
if you want to make a donation to
Mhm.
reform with a cryptocurrency, you've got to get your ID digitally verified with facial recognition technology under the KYC regulations. So they're actually making people do digital ID just to make a
Yeah.
crypto donation. So they don't
No,
get
that's
it.
yeah. It's very important now. What you said there is that David is a very principled man, and he stood up with the Heritage Party, like against the whole COVID scandal, and also digital ID. He's not somebody that has just jumped on the bandwagon. So, David, we don't want to forget this. Tell us, how people can support the Heritage Party, and what are the basic principles of the Heritage Party?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, our website is heritageparty.org, and on there you can see our principles and our manifesto. I've just updated the manifesto, so it's about 60 pages long now, but there's a three-page, there's a
Yeah,
three-page
yeah.
summary, just in bullet points you can read as well, which takes a little bit less time. But we've essentially got the same principles that we had at the beginning. So national sovereignty, free
Mhm.
speech and liberty, traditional family values, self-sufficiency in skills, excellence in education, self-sufficiency in energy, which means abandoning all of this net zero climate alarmist
Oh,
nonsense.
absolutely.
and protecting our children, particularly from the grooming gangs, which no one has really spoken about until recently. There's a lot of, a lot of people speaking about that now, which is good. But again, I questioned Sadiq Khan on that in 2020 when
Yes.
nobody else would talk about it in any other political party. So we got to protect
Didn't
children
you get
from
a bit
that.
of
And
stick over that you when you were questioning him?
yeah,
Did
I
you get?
got cancelled.
Yes. Yeah.
The chairman cancelled me from questioning it. Like, I think Sadiq Khan's response when I asked him, are there grooming gangs in London, was to try to turn it round and make out that I was racist. He said, are you asking me because
Yeah.
of my ethnicity and because of my religion? I said,
Yeah.
no, I'm asking you because you're in charge of police and crime in London. And then the next thing I knew, the chairman of the assembly intervened and said, oh, it's got an Indian accent. I was going to do that, but I'll get in trouble if I
You get
imitate his
slaughtered.
accent.
Yeah.
But he said, oh, you're getting off the topic now. You stick to the topic. Don't ask any more questions. And then I was essentially shut down from asking
Yeah.
any more questions about
So,
grooming
folks,
gangs in
this is what I'm
London.
saying. David has been standing up for all these issues for many, many years. So, do have a look at the website and everything. Now, loads of questions I want to ask you. What's your view, the Heritage Party view, about the whole illegal immigration? Obviously, we've had another Wayne Broadhurst who was stabbed this week. I mean, it's really getting out of hand. How would the Heritage Party handle it, and what's your viewpoint in the way the government's handling it?
Well, again, I mean, that's another one of our principles that we've had from the beginning, that we need to control our borders and we need low immigration. I mean, a little bit of immigration for people who've got scarce skills, okay,
Yeah.
fine, but we need to stop the boats immediately by not meeting them in the channel and pushing them back to France. We need to reduce the number of work and student visas that we give out by 75 to 80%. So it's back at what it was, the levels that it was in,
Yeah.
pre-Tony Blair. It's okay to have a few students coming in to give out a
Absolutely.
few work visas, but giving out, 1 million student and work visas combined is just ridiculous. I mean, it should be, no 200,000 at the most combined. That would then bring us into net emigration rather than
Yes.
net immigration. So the problem will then solve itself. And that's what we need to do, as well as, what a lot of people are talking about, we were first, is you getting rid of this indefinite leave to remain,
Yes.
whereby people can, come to the country, deliver pizzas for 5 years, and then they can stay forever. And then,
Yes.
a year later, they can get citizenship. So we need to end that. And I think we need to say, if you want citizenship, you have to be in the country for 20 years, not 6 years or 5 years, 20
Yes.
years. You give the lion's share of your life to prove that you actually are totally dedicated to this country. You want to live here, work here, settle here, not just something you get after 5 years of, doing gender studies or selling sandwiches. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And what's your viewpoint about all the hotels? There've been a lot of protests outside the hotels. What's the solution for that? Is that just to clear the backlog and get people returned to their countries, or should they be moved into different kind of locations and accommodation?
Well, no, everyone who's come illegally, and most of the people in the hotels are people who are bogus asylum seekers, should be deported, no question.
Yes.
They
Yes.
shouldn't be in hotels. They shouldn't be housed in houses of multiple occupancy, which the government's given these huge
Yes.
lucrative contracts to
Yeah.
Serco and others to find homes in the private rented sector for migrants coming over. I mean, this is just absolute nonsense. This harms British people. Everything that the government's doing with immigration here is detrimental to ordinary British people. I've heard so many people who've lost their jobs because they've turned a hotel into a migrant hotel and weddings
Yes.
being cancelled and things, which is absolutely disgusting, for the government to do this, to actually militate, against British people, to destroy jobs and to destroy a whole economy there. And, putting them in towns and cities and villages all over the country, of course, is detrimental to the social fabric of all of those places, not least because a lot of the people there are crazy. They are very violent and aggressive. We know their rapes, murders, stabbings, assaults
Yes.
have gone through the roof, and it's
Right.
going through the roof in small places that have never ever had a problem with crime before. soon as they get some people coming from places where there have been, horrible wars, and I know, but you get people who the countries who are a problem in Somalia, who are a problem in Congo, and they
Yes,
come to the UK, they're not suddenly going to become choir boys.
yes.
They are, they shouldn't be here. That's just simple as. We put British people first, and we put the
Yeah,
safety of British people first, and these people
absolutely.
need to go.
So what's great about you, David, is you're very forthright with your views. Have you ever had any kind of comeback from the police about anything that you've posted, and what do you feel about the state of free speech in the country today?
Well, the free speech is dreadful. I mean,
Yes.
we hear that you're freer in Russia to express your opinions
Yeah.
than you
Yeah.
are in the UK. Given the arrest statistics for
Yes.
speech
Huge.
crimes, is that
Yes.
over 10 times as many people have been arrested in the UK for
Yes.
speech crimes than they have in Russia when we're only half the size of the
Yes.
population. So it's absolutely horrendous. Um, I've never been, visited by the police. I just, it is a worry because I
Yes.
think, could they turn up at my door and just, drag me through the process? But
Yes.
I do try to, attack and defend at the same time. So
Yes.
I'm very careful not to libel anybody, to defame
Yes.
anybody. You
Yes.
can't get into these kind of,
No.
arguments where you make it personal. So I
No.
talk about politics, I talk about
Yes.
issues, I talk about opinions, but I stay
Yes.
away from actually, saying anything about an individual person. So I don't get any comeback that way. But
Yes.
the appalling thing I just, posted this morning, you have
Right.
people like Wayne O'Rourke still in prison after the Southport mass murders for posting something on social media. He was accused of stirring up hatred, arrested by the police, and held on remand for a
Yes.
minor offence where he should have been given bail and then,
Yes.
given a court date later on. But this is how Kier Starmer deliberately interfered with the justice process to
Yes.
hold people on remand and threaten them and coerce them into confessing when in a normal circumstance they wouldn't be held on remand and coerced to confessing. They would be treated like this Labour Party guy. What was the
Yes.
guy who was said, "I will slit all their throats." I can't remember
Oh
his
my
name.
God. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was given bail, and then he
Yes.
had a trial, and he was let off.
Yeah.
And so it shows the two-tier justice and the two-tier
Absolutely.
policing we've got in this country. Um,
What do you
but
think of Kier Starmer as a leader? Do you think the country's got any hope? Do you think he'll last the 5 years, or do you think that something will bring him down?
He's absolutely appalling. He's dreadful. He's
Yes.
destroying the country. I mean, we
Yes.
had decay under Tony Blair, or decline and decay. Now Keir Starmer is implementing demolition. I mean, the fake
Yes.
conservatives we've had weren't any better. They were
Mm.
just the heirs to Blair, but Keir Starmer has just ramped it up to another level, to another degree. They're attacks on pensioners, on private schools, on farmers, on businesses. Now they're going to increase tax on workers in the budget. So they're hammering everybody, even their own base, even their
I
own
know.
supporters. They're
Yeah.
making life worse for. So they're absolutely deplorable. But they won because people were so disgusted with the fake conservatives at the last election. I mean, they didn't win because they got any more votes. They won because the fake conservatives vote, was cut in half. Now in
Yes.
the next election, Labour are done.
Yes. They're
Even
finished.
people that supported them are
Mm.
finished with them.
Yeah.
You saw that in the Caerphilly
Yes.
by-election. You see that in by-elections all over the country, in local by-elections. But the question is how much longer do they survive? And I hope that the Labour Party collapses. And
Yeah, I just don't know how they can stay in. I mean, the budget will probably finish off the country when that comes in, but there seems to be scandal after scandal after scandal. But he's still there. He's not a man of morality that's suddenly going to stand down, is he? I mean, he's got to. And one of the only ways that they can bring him down, I guess, is the other people in the Labour Party that can get rid of him. I mean, is there any way to get rid of him?
Well, that's it. It would have to be people in the Labour Party sticking the knife in, and the Tories, they're quite good at that because
Yeah,
they've
they are
stuck the
good.
knives into, about they have 5 leaders over 14 years, so they're very good at sticking the knife into each other. Labour not so much, but you
No,
wonder if they will. I
yeah,
mean, you've got this thing with Jeremy Corbyn starting and Zara
yeah,
Sultana, so I think that might peel a few people off to the left
yes,
that will go and join that, thinking that
yes.
they might have a better chance of keeping their
Mhm.
seat in the next election. But you
Yeah,
basically need 80 of them to
yes,
defect to another party or to bring a motion of no confidence against the government. And it's a tall order, but we'll see.
can we
Um,
survive? Can we survive another 3.5 years, David?
it's not going to be easy. I mean, as well as what they're doing deliberately with their legislative program, and the people in the Labour government, they look like a bunch of incompetent,
Yes,
school children. They really look like they're not very intelligent at all. But behind the scenes, you've got these think tanks that are very,
yes,
very clever, that are
yes,
writing the legislation. Demos or the people in the Fabian Society, they write the
yes,
legislation, which they just give to David Lammy. I mean, who's basically a
yes,
few
yes.
sandwiches short of a picnic.
Yeah, yeah,
He couldn't
exactly.
write any legislation himself, but they
Yeah,
would give the legislation to them. They just lay it, and then they walk through the lobbies, and then they do the bidding of the very, very clever people who
yes,
are pushing through the radical change
yes,
in
yes,
the country. So with another 3.5 years, he's going to do so much damage to the country and the constitution. It would take, a long, long time to
yeah,
unwind it, as well as unwinding all the stuff that's been done by Tony Blair and the fake
yes.
conservatives. I mean, we've basically had, nearly 30 years of
I
destruction
know.
from 1997 onwards, and it's still going on now. So, I hope that they
Mhm.
will fall apart and that there will be a general election soon. I think that there may be a move on Kier Starmer next year after
Yes, the May
the
elections.
Senedd and Holyrood elections.
Yes,
But
yes,
but Labour will still be in power, and there's no reason for the MPs to give up that power because they know they're done, and
absolutely.
and so they will hang on and keep their salaries coming in for as
Mhm.
long as they possibly can.
Well, what about the talk that his replacement might be Sadiq Khan, who you, of course, stood against in the mayoral elections? What has been your experience of Sadiq Khan, and what do you think about his complete destruction of London? I mean, I'm a ex-Londoner, lived there 30 years. The way the traffic is now, the 20-mile-an-hour zones, all the congestion charge, the ULEZ. I mean, I think he's just destroyed London.
That was horrible. I mean, I lived in London when I was younger. I loved it. It was a
Yes, I
wonderful place
loved it.
for a young man to be in the
Yeah.
90s. But
Oh,
now I hardly
absolutely.
go there.
Yeah.
It's really unpleasant to go there because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel English. It's not British, they want what they call hyper diversity, which is
Mhm.
when there are fewer than 50% people who are white, which they've achieved now, and that the white population will just go down and down, and there will, it will be a global city
Yes.
filled with people from all over the world, which is what Sadiq Khan says. Oh, you're a Londoner if you live here. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter what your culture is. You're a Londoner if you're here. And he'll celebrate every single culture apart from British culture and English culture. So it's not a very pleasant place to be if you're British, if you're English. Um, and as well as that, as you say, all of the traffic,
Yes.
obstacles and the
Restrictions.
15-minute
Yes.
cities.
Yeah.
It's so hard to move around. I mean, I really feel for the taxi drivers. I did a lot of work with
Oh,
the
yeah.
taxi drivers
Yeah.
when I was a London Assembly member, and progressively over 5 years, things became harder for them. There were more blockages, more places they couldn't go, and then
Yeah.
they were only allowed to get an electric taxi, not a diesel
Yeah.
one, and so you can't travel, but
No.
you're limited in how far you can travel in a day with an electric engine. As well as all the wokery as well, the diversity, the transgenderism, and all this
Uh,
nonsense. You
didn't you
got
get
sort of
involved in a row about transgender or something? I can't remember. Wasn't there something with Sadiq Khan or something? I can't remember.
my very last question time. which
Yes.
was March 2021.
Yeah.
I asked Sadiq Khan about one of his tweets. He put out a tweet that said, "Trans men are men, trans women are women." And I said, "Mr. Mayor, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Can you explain to me? Do you think that women can have a penis?" And he wouldn't
Yeah.
answer the question. I said, "Well, do you think men can have babies?" And he tried to turn it around and make out that I was full of hate and stirring up
Of course.
hatred as normal.
Of
And I was
course.
cancelled again because
Yes.
the Greens and the Labour
Mm.
Assembly members put a motion in
Yeah.
that I should no longer be heard. Can you believe it? So
Oh, dear.
I was just asking Sadiq Khan about
Yeah.
what he meant,
Simple question.
and I
Simple
was
question.
I was stopped from speaking again.
Uh,
That just shows
you've got a bit of
it
history on
became
this,
a
haven't
regular
you?
feature.
So he's involved in the kind of grooming gang scandal. Do you think like this government inquiry? Do you think it's got legs? Do you think it's going to happen? Is it just a cover up?
The government, the Labour government, doesn't want an inquiry to happen. They're going to do everything they possibly can to stop it. And if it goes ahead, it's going to be a whitewash, which is
Yeah.
why I think it was three or four of the people who were involved in it, victims and the possible chairman, said, "We're not going to do this anymore because it's just going to be a cover up." They don't want to talk about, the element of this that is, it's Pakistanis and
Yes.
Bangladeshis mainly who are doing this, and the victims are white. They always make it to say, "Oh, well, this is all ethnicities of victims and perpetrators, and whether the majority of perpetrators are white," which actually in this particular type of crime, it's not.
Yeah.
It's Pakistani Muslims
Yes.
mostly who are doing it. And with hundreds of thousands of victims, you've got to ask the question, how many rapists were there? There's
Yes.
probably millions of rapists. There's going
Yes.
to be huge, huge numbers, including police officers,
Yes.
labor councillors,
Yeah.
council
Because it's gang.
workers, and MPs. They
Yes.
don't want that to be found out.
No.
So it's not going to go anywhere with the Labour government.
A couple of minutes left. So how are we going to get you elected, David? I mean, people have got to support you, and if you don't know anything about the Heritage Party, folks, do have a look on the website, read all his pointers and all that, because this is a principled man who stood up. How are we going to get people to vote for you, David?
It's a numbers game. It's always a numbers game, And as a political party, I can never have too many members. I can never have enough money. I can never have enough manpower. We always need more candidates, more
Yes.
people to support the party, and help behind the scenes, and and help our candidates. So if you would like, please do have a look and join us. I mean, the greatest thing anyone can do, is a very small thing practically, is to join as a member. It's not that expensive. It's £25 for annual
Yeah.
membership, and you can join on our website, heritageparty.org. And you can also, once you're a member, stand as a candidate. And there's
Yeah.
loads of elections. There's over 5,000 elections that are scheduled for May 2026. We need candidates in as many places as possible, whether it's Wales, Scotland, London, Manchester, Birmingham, wherever. So please don't sit back, get involved in not just being political, but being party political. And I think if you do look at our manifesto, you'll see that we've got a coherent and comprehensive set of principles and policies which we need to restore our nation and get us back on track.
Fantastic. So that is David Kurten. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to have you on. You're always welcome, and we love listening to what you've got to say. So thanks very much, David.
Thanks, Liam.